Beyond the Institution of Marriage. An extract from A Radical Awakening by Dr. Shefali. What did people do before the agricultural revolution? It seems like they lived in small packs of 30 to 50 people and set up nomadic communities in which men and women loosely paired with each other. The children were taken care of by the entire community. When the plow was invented, food began to be grown in blocks of land, which tied people to the land, and in a way they hadn't been at any time before in our history as a species. We settled down, living in smaller units. When marriage was introduced, it was different from what was today. It was mostly for practical purposes. In fact, it still is in most parts of the world. Families come together to keep or expand property interests. For centuries, it was the way men controlled their assets, namely their land, wife, and children. Marriage was created to keep units together, with the mother close to their children and the father responsible for the upkeep. It was also an easy way to ensure that the property stayed within the family and that the man was not raising another person's child. Marriage was, and still is, heavily patriarchal, ordained by men, often under the eyes of God and governed by the law. It's largely controlled by clergy, fathers, husbands, and/or male authorities. The place of the woman and the children is second to the law than the male in the household. As such, while marriage might protect the woman from other male predators, it frequently doesn't protect her within the bounds of a marriage itself. Marital rape was legal in many US states right up until the 1970s. Take the most common scenario. A girl, just out of college, walks down the aisle with a boy she's been dating off and on through college or high school. They take the marital vow to love and care till death do them part. If they haven't already, they move in together. This is done by thousands every single day as we attempt to recreate the household we grew up in and/or demand of growing up in. I call it an adult version of playing house. It isn't our fault that this is the only model we know, but we need to become aware that it is just that, a model. It isn't a prescription served up by God, and neither is it the only way to live. It's just a way of being that has evolved, perpetuated by a culture that follows traditions out of compliance. In this model, we pledge our allegiance to another for the rest of our lives, making a promise to love them forever. I can hear many of you protesting that if there wasn't an underlying contract of loyalty and longevity, most marriages would fall apart. If that happened, then our children would be at risk. However, some 60% of marriages are already falling apart in the United States. This demonstrates the fragility of the marital institution. Think about it. Would you get on an airplane that had a 60% chance of crashing? You certainly would not. Yet millions keep getting married day in and day out. The reason? Cultural indoctrination. If it takes a legal contract to keep two people together, the question one should ask is whether the two people should be together in the first place. Are we so numb of the idea of autonomy that we think loyalty and longevity should trump individuals' growth and liberation? This is really a clash between the old paradigm of loving and marrying and a new, bolder paradigm of loving and liberating. The fact is this: whether they have a contract or not, people change their minds. What sense does it make for a 24-year-old, for example, to bear the cost of her decisions for the rest of her life? The old way is to marry for the sake of companionship over time. For longevity matters regardless of the quality. The old way is to see marriage as the only way to raise children securely. The old way is based on fear, possession, and control. It operates out of lack and unworthiness. It's clearly time for a paradigm shift. If it weren't, more than 50% of marriages wouldn't end acrimoniously in divorce. We need to shift into a drastically new model of marriage, one that is based on growth, not longevity. One where choice, abundance, and freedom are the foundation elements of the union, instead of fear-based obligatory and contractual bonds. If marriages were predicated on different ideals such as growth, respect, authenticity, and freedom, we would be living in a different world. In this model, we would allow each other to grow and evolve without any impediment. We would understand if the other needed to move on to another person and to another phase of their life. We would release the other with equanimity. We would work things out amicably. We wouldn't need divorce courts or lawyers. We would leave behind lack and truly embrace abundance. It takes daring and courage to topple an entrenched institution such as marriage. It takes a new and bold vision for ourselves and our partners, one where respect for the other's unique expression of self takes precedence over our own ideas of how things should be. When this happens, there will only be interconnection and mutual reciprocity. When the marriage comes to a close, the couple can celebrate this transition instead of feeling ashamed and ostracized. The entire institution of divorce would come tumbling down. Now, wouldn't that be a marvelous thing indeed?